Good evening and welcome to Wethersfield Talk. I'm Rick Gary, your host, and tonight we're here to talk about a referendum that's coming up in Wethersfield in September, and it has to do with the renovation of our elementary schools. It's been a long time coming, and there's been other attempts at a referendum to repair our schools, and this is another referendum that is going to happen in September, and I have three guests with me tonight to talk about that. With me I have John Wayner, who is the head of the building committee for the schools, as well as on the Board of Education.
Yes.
Emily Zambrello, town councilor. And Sally Keating, you are a member of the, there's a group involved in getting this done, correct? Sorry if I don't know the name.
Wethersfield Invests Now in Tomorrow. Win it.
Excellent. So tonight, our goal is tonight is just to give you the facts. So when you go to vote, you're voting based on the facts of the referendum and the history and kind of background of why we're here and what needs to be done. So maybe, John, you can kind of start us off with where we are and why we're here.
Sure, yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having us. This is an important topic for our town. It's the future of our town in many ways. My story here starts all the way back. I've been a resident of Wethersfield since 2008. My story starts before that when we were looking for homes to move here in Wethersfield, and we caught wind of, they're going to start updating elementary schools. This was back in 2007. Yes. I'm sure everybody out there has other stories that are very similar to that, because this has been tried for many times in our town, as we know. I'll just give you a little history of how we got here. We first formed an ad hoc committee when I first joined the Board of Education and others. That was back a couple years ago, and we started working with a smaller group within the committee from the community, right, non-political, right, to kind of get feedback around and see what the interest was for shaping our elementary schools. We explored different patterns, how we wanted the schools to be arranged. Community schools, obviously, overwhelmingly was very popular for the right reason. We looked at all different kinds of options and ultimately gave that feedback back to the Board of Education. Board of Education took that feedback and at the same time put out a community survey. So then a survey went out to everybody around the town. A lot of parents especially responded, gave us great feedback and data that we could use to help inform more of our strategy around what we want to do for the plan. Right. And then from there, the building committee was formed. The town formed the building committee. Originally there was another chair. Russ Moran was originally the chair, and then I became chair of this committee. But this committee is a group of volunteers in our town, again, bipartisan, that had a lot of different skill sets that brought construction, project management, finance, different backgrounds into the process because they were really deemed the experts in trying to build this out, right? So that group of people got all the feedback and started looking and looking at what we were going to do. And then ultimately the decision was made that let's find a consultant to help bring this plan forward and start to get the real experts in there.
Exactly.
Right? So we went out to RFP and the building committee interviewed a bunch of different clients, and then we settled on TSKP and Downs, who came in and right off the bat proved their worth to us by really investing in what the plan was going to become and what the plan is today. And they took in a lot of that community feedback that we gave them, but then they also went out to the community. I think you may know they were here in the community center,
yes, they were.
In the senior center, sorry. They went to all the different schools and PTOs. I mean, they were pretty much all around town trying to gather that feedback. So the consensus came back and it really became, okay, the town loves their community schools. We needed to renovate and or build 5 new elementary schools. We know the condition that they're in. We don't necessarily have to harp on that here, but we know we needed to do something.
Absolutely.
And the plan was settled. So we ended up, after countless meetings and listening to the community even further, we decided that the first phase was going to be a brand new high crest, and the high crest is going to be built on the Keisha Farm parcel that's across from the barn. So that farm
flat
parcel,
land across where the house is.
That's correct. Area. Right there. And then while that one's being actually built, which will end up being the new high crest as soon as it's open, the old high crest will stay. We'll use that as a swing space for the next school in the phase, which is Webb. So we'll renovate Webb. All those children will then move to the older high crest. The new high crest will obviously be open running. And then we're going to renovate Webb into a 5-6 academy, which overwhelmingly is a positive experience for Wethersfield. Webb Elementary was built years and years ago as a junior high school, so it fits perfectly into the curriculum and the educational specs that the Board of Ed have put together. And then, of course, after Webb would be Charles Wright, which would be the third school in this phase, which will be renovated as new as well. So really exciting things. And by the way, I'll mention that this plan was unanimously voted on by both Board of Ed and Town Council. right? So everybody on the board, everybody on the council all agrees that this plan is the future of Weathersfield.
So that would be a 5-6 at Webb. The other 4 remaining schools would become K4.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. That's correct.
So
yes.
in this proposal, it's build a new Highcrest, renovate Charles Wright, renovate Webb. What about Hamner and Emerson? They are part of this referendum or no?
They are not part of this referendum, and by the way, feel free to chime in. Anybody, I don't want to do all the
Yeah.
talking.
No.
But,
I just want to make sure. So this is for those 3 schools.
It's for the we broke it into phases. So this was a recommendation that TSKP and Downs and the building committee came up with. Obviously, we all unanimously believe that was correct. To break it into phases helps ease the burden on the taxpayers. Right. We get a chance to actually, through the process, visit with the community and see the community in action. We get to revisit that second phase once that first phase is starting to move forward. So
Excellent. You have anything to input into that? Yes.
So I can talk about the finances here because I know
Okay.
that's one of the biggest questions we've
Of
heard around
course.
town is what is this going to cost? So $239 million is probably a number that people have heard by now. It is the total cost of the project. It is not the cost to taxpayers. And we want to be very, very clear about it. If you've heard that is the cost to taxpayers, it is just not true. This is the maximum cost of the project. The state is picking up a large portion of that.
Okay.
So there are a few elements to this. There's always a base reimbursement rate that a town gets for a project. It's really based on our relative property wealth to other towns. So the state tries to estimate how much we can afford. So we're in the 47 to 57 range in Weathersfield. That's how much the state would typically reimburse us for a school construction project. We knew that would be a difficult pill to swallow for our taxpayers here, especially knowing that this is such a huge project. We're asking for 3 brand new schools. 47 to 57 is great, but it's still a great deal of money that the taxpayers would have to contribute. So we worked with our legislators very closely from the beginning of the legislative session this year back in January, and we asked them for support in getting more reimbursement from the state, and they were successful in that. We actually got a huge bump, which we were thrilled about. It was more than we could have hoped for, where each of the 3 schools received a 15-point bump.
Oh,
and then
that's big.
Highcrest, because Highcrest is going to have our pre-K space, that gets another 15-point bump. Because that's a new feature of the school construction laws this year is that if your project has pre-K, you get another 15-point bump, and that's for the entire school, not just that space.
Oh, okay.
So that means that we're now looking at between 71 to 76% for each of these schools, as opposed to 47 to 57. It averages out to about 73, 74% of what we'll be getting back from the state. So that is a huge, huge boon to taxpayers. That's
Makes
money
a big
that
difference.
It's a big difference, and it's money that our town won't have to spend. We're essentially getting 3 schools for the price of 1 here, if you think about it. And so the other number of voters will see when they go to vote on this is $88 million. That is the maximum amount that the town will borrow to fund our portion of the project.
Okay.
It doesn't work out exactly where it's 26% of the amount, but we've built in a cushion here. We're being very conservative. We don't want to be back here asking the voters for more money in a few years because we underestimated how much it was going to cost.
Right.
So this is incorporating inflation, it's incorporating potential unexpected overruns, and it's incorporating that the state might not fully reimburse us for certain things.
Sure.
So we're building that in. We will only borrow as much as we actually need.
So that is your expected maximum. Like you don't think it could ever go over that. Obviously, the world is the world, but you've built in a lot of cushions, and you think the 88 million is a good number.
If I may, Emily, I mean, so TSKP and Downs did a great job working with the committee to build in a cushion for, and Emily mentioned it, inflation, but it's also project risks and project run.
Right.
Their model was to be very conservative with the cost.
Okay.
They did that on purpose, right? They and look, at the end of the day, every project has pieces of it that are non-reimbursable. For example, you'll hear a lot about that. There's always a little bit of that and that's part of the 88 million. But they were very conservative in their approach with it, and the building committee was very appreciative of that from the consultant.
So TSK, they obviously have experience with schools.
100%, yeah. I mean, they did projects in Manchester. They did Goodwin Community College in Hartford. I mean, a number of different projects, right? We vetted that out, but
Okay.
they were very impressive, and they've been very impressive with us here in the town.
Good. Now, Sally, how does your group fit into this?
We're the cheerleaders.
Okay.
We're the cheerleaders. We're helping to get information out. You know, we talked about the 239 million. There are
Right.
people who think that's what we're going to have to borrow, and that's
Right.
not true. So
Okay.
we're really working to make sure people understand it's 88 million. We've got a great state reimbursement rate, and this is really a great opportunity.
Right.
It's not going to come around again. You know,
Wow.
people want to kick the can down the road. We've done that for far too long. These
Yes,
schools really need a lot of work.
I mean, I've said before this was going to be a factual episode. We're just going to do the facts, and the fact is, my kids have gone through Charles Wright and Emerson and Webb, and my nieces and nephews are in Hamner, and the condition is terrible on some of these schools, and that's not swaying anybody or anything. It's just the truth that the schools have been neglected for too long.
Right. Absolutely.
So
I watch-
something has to be done eventually. Whether
There's a brick I watch. My granddaughter now goes to Hamner Elementary, and there's this one brick that I'm watching to see, is it going to fall? You know, the foundation is underneath it, and I know the road
Right.
salt and all gets to that part
Sure.
of the building, and so it's degrading the concrete. But then there was a program last May, and I walked around the back of the school, and there you can see rebar in the foundation. The
right.
foundation is crumbling.
wearing off,
I
yeah.
mean, these are our town assets.
Right.
You know, we have to take care of them. It's
Right.
too important. We've got thousands of kids in the schools. It's the right thing to do. It's timely.
Now, going back to the initial planning for this, and you looked at all these different sites, so TSK went through,
Yes.
because I know there was a lot of talk of why not put this new high crest where the baseball field is, why not do that? So I'm assuming all that
Yep.
vetting, a lot of time was spent?
Oh,
And
yes.
that's-
Great deal of time.
So, I mean, they looked at, I believe that it was a total of 8 or 9 originally, like at the very beginning, right? We're talking 8 or 9 different sites in town. You know, Weathersfield, we're kind of landlocked.
Yes.
We don't have a lot of open space, and they took everything into account. And at the end of the day, you know, we came up with, the building committee along with TSKP came up with 3 different areas of town where you can build a new, originally called swing space, which we now will call the new school
high crest,
for that community. And you know, we heard community feedback at the Old Weathersfield that came in. We heard feedback, I mean, across town about all the spots, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, you know, it's hard to figure out where in town we needed to do that. But I'm very happy to say that we listened to the community, we took in the feedback, and we settled on a place that I think is the right place to put this school at this time. And you know, we're excited, hopefully, for the future of that.
So just logistically, if you build a new high crest, the old high crest becomes swing space
Yep.
for Charles Wright and Webb, I
And
think
Webb,
you said,
yes.
right? What happens, so that doesn't go K4 right away? Or do you have to renovate all the schools before it comes K4? How does that?
Great question. So Webb's going to be renovated for a 5-6, which is going to result in a redistricting, right? And that is something that happens after construction of Highcrest, obviously, and during the
Right.
process of renovating Webb. That won't be done until Webb is complete, right? So you know, and I don't have the timeline in front of me, so
Sure.
I won't. But as soon as Webb is constructed and renovated, is when the talks within
Okay.
the Board of Education, working with the new superintendent as well, those types of things, working with the town, will then take place. You know, right? We don't know. We
Right.
can't speak to what that
Sure.
redistricting is now, but
No.
that will happen.
So the idea is
Um,
Webb gets done, it instantly becomes a 5-6, right, when it opens?
That's correct.
And this other schools, renovated or not, become K4s?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And I mean, and we did population studies, and you know, we're thankful in Weathersfield we have, you know, a steady line of you know, kids going to our schools. We're not dipping below or above that line, right? So we're
Okay.
able to say that K4 actually makes a lot of sense. We have the room in even the buildings that we're not renovating right away to house those K through 4 students.
Okay.
One of the things that I don't think gets enough attention is the disparity in our schools. You know, we have some schools where the classrooms have 30 kids, or they're pushing 30, and then other schools where there's 17 kids in the class.
Right.
We need to right-size that, and that was something that we had a lot of discussions on that. So when we have 4 K4 schools, there's going to be 3 classrooms for each grade,
Right.
and that opens up a lot of, it fixes a lot of issues that the
With class
schools
size.
have.
Yep.
It is. And Emily, you've lived through a redistricting,
Yes.
as my kids did as well.
I went to Webb when it was a kindergarten.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Yes, my kids did too. And, people get really afraid of redistricting. And I remember speaking out about it back then, saying, look, the kids are fine. It was, and no offense, parents, but the parents are the ones that had the issue. They didn't want to leave their friends, and the kids seemed to do fine. The next year, they all had good friends again, and they all met at the middle. And now they'll meet in 5th grade,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we think that's going to be a great benefit to have
Right.
them. The 7th and 8th grade is a difficult time in a kid's life, and to do that at the same time as meeting everybody else in town who you've never met before, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So we think the 5, 6, it will do a number of positive things, but that's
That's
a big
one of
one, is
them.
bringing them together a little bit earlier. And just to add, I went to Charles Wright. I knew your son back then.
Yeah.
And the temporary classrooms
Oh, that's
that were
right.
put in when I was in 5th grade are still there.
Are
20
they?
years later.
Oh my gosh.
And just hearing about that, seeing the state of that school looking
Yeah.
exactly the same, because one of the things that the building committee did last year, which I think was a really great idea, was to actually open the schools up and say,
Yes.
okay,
Oh, come
anyone in the
look.
community, come look. We'll do tours. We'll talk about the issues. You can
Right.
take a look for yourself. So it was great even for me, who's been in some of these schools, but not all, to see
Right.
see
The
what they
actual
like,
condition
hear from the
and-
principals, see the actual conditions, see that those temporary classrooms were not so temporary.
Yeah,
Right.
and as a parent myself, I'm glad you brought that up, because even I didn't see some of the parts of the schools that I got to see from just doing those
Yeah.
tours. Because as a parent, you're dropping your kids off.
Sure.
You go in the building, but
You're
you
not
don't go
seeing-
everywhere in the building.
right.
So it was really eye-opening.
So could we talk about the actual referendum now? When
Mhm.
is that going to happen? And is it the regular voting places? Is it?
Yes, it's September 16th. It's a Tuesday. Same voting hours, so 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., and it's your same polling place.
Okay.
So we're hoping to make it as easy as possible.
So
for
this is the
people.
September 16th, your regular polling place. The schools are closed that day, obviously, right? They must be, because the schools are the voting places.
Some of them are, yeah.
Yeah.
John, do you know? 2 of them are.
Well,
Yeah,
anyway,
I will have to double check for
that's
the
fine.
committee on
that's
that.
But
Yeah,
the parents already know about
but
that. But for
yes.
Yeah.
you, it's September 16th, your regular polling location between 6 and 8,
That's right.
8 p.m.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say before we?
I think
we've
lots
said
of
a lot.
people, I could talk for hours about
Yeah, we all could.
some of the poor conditions. I mean, John talked about the tours,
Right.
and one of my fears with the tours, was that you can't see a lot of the things.
Sure.
I mean, we have asbestos tile. John
Yeah.
Q. Public doesn't recognize asbestos tile. Let's get rid of that. The
Right.
tiles are chipping.
Yes.
All 5 roofs leak. When you get water into schools, it ruins carpeting, it ruins
Sure.
school supplies. It's behind walls where you don't see it, and mold is growing. We have some schools that have a lot of mold,
Okay.
and that's not right. We need to fix that.
So again, I'm a neutral party here, but we all know that something has to be done. And I know a lot of people say, well, not this. Right? And then the next referendum comes up and they say, not this. Eventually, something has to happen.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, it does sound like there's a good reimbursement from the state, so that's a positive. And this is why I wanted to do this show, so these kind of things can get out there. People aren't just voting, because sometimes people drive around, they see a sign that says vote no or vote yes,
Yeah.
and that's all, they don't know anything.
Right.
Right? So this, I think, is important, that everybody knows exactly what is happening before they vote.
And we can talk for just a second about what the alternative would be if this were to fail again, because the referendum failed in 2022 to rebuild the schools. If it
Right.
fails now, our only option is really to do patchwork.
Right.
And that was the first thing the consultants did when they came in. They said, we're going to show you what it takes to do patchwork and just do the basic repairs, maybe a
Right.
roof, maybe some security upgrades. The schools
Right.
will look the same as they do now, and they'll last about 5 to 10
Right.
years before we're back here having this conversation again. And they said that could take upwards of $60 million,
Right.
incorporating a small state reimbursement. So that's the cost of doing nothing. That's where we'd end up. We would also be leaving tens of millions of dollars on the table, because the state's not going to offer us this reimbursement rate again.
Right.
That will go to somebody else who can use it.
Right.
And one thing I've heard, it was brought up during the last council meeting, someone said, well, the state reimbursement is still our tax dollars.
Yes.
And that is true. But what is also true is that we are already paying for these projects in every other community in the state.
Yes.
And if we don't take advantage of this money, it will go to someone else, and we will still pay for it.
Right.
So that's what's on the line here. We will leave tens of
Yes.
millions of dollars on the table.
Well, that's the other thing. We do pay state and federal taxes,
Mhm.
and that money goes to the state and to the federal government, and then they give it back. to the states.
Right.
But like you say, it's going to go to somebody. The money's there and it's going to go to somebody. So,
One other thing I'd like to add is the energy inefficiency in our buildings.
oh, sure.
I know from talking to an employee at Emerson Williams, they set their thermometer in the wintertime at 75, and because the HVAC system is so old, it can't be regulated any longer. They can't get parts. So what happens is some areas get up to be 85 degrees.
Right.
Well, that's not a good learning environment.
Right.
So some classrooms, they open the windows. So we're paying for the heat. Other classrooms use air conditioners, so we're paying for heating and air conditioning that are fighting together to get the right
Right.
temperature.
To get the right
And that
temperature.
happens in at least 2 of the schools that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So we're paying for all of that inefficiency, and
Right.
that's not
Yeah.
right.
Well, it's going to be up to the voters now again.
Yes.
So hopefully with this kind of information, and I'm sure your group is putting out information, that everybody has the right information when they vote, and that's the important thing. Now again, however you vote, but people should vote with the right information, with the facts.
100%.
So hopefully, hopefully this goes well. All right. Anything else you'd like to add? I think you.
We could just keep talking.
I know you
So,
could. I know. Well, it's
I
good
think-
because people are passionate about this, obviously,
Yeah,
because
Yes.
it's your kids,
Yeah.
right?
It is.
And
Or your
or your
grandkids.
grandkids.
Grandkids,
Yes.
yeah.
And even people like me, my kids graduated a long time ago.
Right.
Not that long. Yeah. But
Yeah.
but I'm still. I want the next group of kids to have a school that's safe. But also, as a taxpayer, I don't want 2 years from now, Charles Wright is closed because the roof or the air conditioning gave it. Now all those kids have to be moved somewhere else, and it would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
It would be a nightmare. So
I think one of the last things I'll just say, just to close it out, is and you said it, is get
Yeah.
the facts right. Use the data that's out there. You know, throughout this process, this has been transparent with the community. The plans are out there on the TSKP website that's attached to the Board of Ed website. The town website has the master plan. You know, all the data you need is out there. Like you said, there are some signs that show 239 million. Let's the number's 88, right? Let's make sure that everybody understands the facts. Vote. There's opposition on everything in town,
Sure.
and that's expected.
sure.
But let's let our community decide for themselves with the right data and the right facts.
And that's good to know. So if you go to the Board of Education website, you can find the plans, the town's website.
Yep, you can. On the Board of Education website, will link you to the referendum website, which will show all the TSKP. They built the website for
Okay.
all the meeting minutes and everything. It houses all the data. The master plan is on the weathersfield.org website as well. It's all out there for everybody.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on here and getting the information out.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, no problem. And everyone, that's September 16th, Tuesday, from 6 to 8 at your regular polling place. So make sure you get out and vote. Go to the town website if you want to know all the facts, the Board of Education website. And I don't think there's anything else we can say. So thank you for coming on. Everyone, thank you for watching. I hope you all get out and vote. And until next time, good night. Okay, the mic's off? Okay. I was like that.